All right, welcome to the final day of Sports Nutrition Symposium 6.0. Real excited to have my friend Dr. Matt Frakes here. We're gonna get into introducing Matt in just a few minutes. We'll kind of talk about what he does and everything he does in regards to that. So before we do, please be sure to let us know where you're from in the chat section. Go ahead and just let us know as we've done. I'm going to make sure that chat is enabled. If it's not, give me 1 second. Yeah, it looks like everyone can kind of put their information in there. So as we've done throughout the week, we've had a pretty impressive global presence from people from Germany, Australia, Taiwan, as we see the first person coming in from Dallas, Texas. And the Mavs beat my Pelicans last night. It looked like they were up by 30 and we came back and it was pretty close. So there we go. So Pascal from Cologne, Germany, thank you again. You've been here. Just about everyone. Looks like Tiffany from Baton Rouge is here. So I know Matt's probably excited about that. I'm not going to be overly biased. I'm not going to wear my LSU hat because I'm an LSU grad. I did my undergrad and my master's at LSU. So I have a large love and affinity for LSU. So anyway, first of all, thanks everyone for being a part of this. We had 1,700 people register for our symposium. So that's always an impressive number. We sit back as a team. Ronnie and I, my business partner, who's an athletic trainer, and we just look and go, wow, how did we do something to where we have so many people that attend our symposiums over these last 3 years of once we started this process? So number one, thank all of you for making this possible. As we dive into this, I'm going to thank our co-partners. If you have a question for Dr. Frakes at any time throughout this, please put that in the Q&A. That way, at the end of this, I'll go ahead and moderate and we'll get those questions answered. So before we get started, let me go ahead and just highlight our co-partners and what they do. You've seen this if you've been here already. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and just kind of highlight the people that we work with closely. Our company partner and proud and trusted sponsor is Momentous. So, when they reached out to us and we a few years ago and we had a discussion, really, when we were selecting this, we discussed not even having a supplement partner, but looking at what Momentous has done and really the work that they've done along the way, and the fact that they provide transparent ingredients, but most importantly, they have a dual certification. So anyone working in the space of athletic performance knows that's just a critical piece of the puzzle to ensure your athletes are going to be safe. Athletes are going to go look for answers in a lot of places, but hopefully they go back to their sports medicine, especially their sports nutrition and sports dietitian to get answers. So check out Momentous, livemomentous.com. Over 150 professional and NCAA sports trust Momentous. And then finally, our only other co-partner for this is the Global Performance Nutrition Institute. So this is an education company to do a lot of great work when it comes to providing education, offering courses, and a lot of different information that goes throughout that process. So please check out thegpni.com. You'll get more information from our team at the end of this symposium in regards to that. If you're wondering about CEUs, so the way CEUs work, especially for dietitians and athletic trainers, if you have a VIP pass, then at the end of each session, 2 hours at the end of each session, please check your account. So go to mysportsd.com, log in. That information will be there. You'll just have to take a short quiz and pass that quiz, 5 questions after each session, and then you will get your certificate. All right. Let's dive into, let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of who Matt is. So Dr. Frakes is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and certified strength and conditioning specialist. He's a former D1 collegiate student athlete who completed his undergraduate and master's degree at Bowling Green University. Also, he completed his doctorate degree, and I won't be upset. He went to Ole Miss to get his doctorate degree, but I know he worked under Dr. Melinda, so I followed a lot of Matt's stuff when he was kind of going through that stuff. That was really impressive to see. He has a wide range of experiences in performance nutrition, strength and conditioning, private practice, healthcare settings. His passion includes supporting diversity and inclusion activities or initiatives, community outreach, and enhancing athletic performance through both evidence-based and practice. And Matt is also the director of sports nutrition and assistant athletic director at LSU. So Matt, thank you so much for being here. So excited to see this presentation.
Thank you, Tavis. I appreciate you, man. Phenomenal. So should I go ahead and share my screen then?
Yeah, it's all you. You can take over and ready to rock and roll.
All right, here we go. All right, so I want to kind of take a little bit of a spin that has not been touched on in our field in general in performance nutrition and in dietetics. And that's looking at the future and also looking at innovation and data analytics. And by no means, there's a lot of people that is very much more smarter than me when it comes to this area. But we are moving towards the direction that the dietitians, the nutritionists, the performance dietitians, they need to have a little bit of familiarity with actually looking at how the data that is being collected within sports science, athletic development, or strength and conditioning, sports medicine and rehabilitation, having all that data collected and how we can utilize it to also paint the picture of visuals for our student athletes to best learn, because they're moving towards that thought process and that mindset as well when it comes into how they collect information and how they understand the information. So when we're looking at as far as just the current state of performance nutrition and collegiate athletics, so it's, as you know, from all our great pioneers that made a stamp in our field, it's a rapidly evolving field. With that being said, that means that there are still some new portions of our field that continues to be a part and growing in our evidence and also growing with how we do our job every single day with as far as utilizing and emphasizing evidence-based approaches. And then also understanding alongside with that, how the dietitian actually supports in athletic performance and also recovery and everything our job entails when it comes into nutrition and supporting each one of our colleagues and how nutrition plays a factor in their jobs from day to day. There's an increase in nutrition staff. You're starting to see now with in collegiate athletics. You're starting to see now even football departments having 4 dietitians just for football alone, alongside with hopefully we continue to grow and elevate with to the point where since we have 21 teams, we're going to have 21 RDs, if you will, at least for supporting our athletes, because with each roster size, it's very hard to give an individualized approach and also to innovate when you're trying to do all the different components of what the dietitian does day to day, from even food service, from research, education, curriculum, all the topics that comes with the coaches reports, player reports, and working side by side, sports medicine and strength and conditioning or athletic development. There's an increased value on nutrition now. So we're at this point now to where nutrition is starting to be seen as a respectable source as far as how we bring our value to the table and how we move and operate within these coaching staffs as well, to provide resources and information on how to hopefully prevent injuries and how to get the best out of your elite athletes every single day, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So there's a growing use of also data analytics with you're seeing from anthropometric data, from also how we're looking at player loads and how we're looking at the information with what type of injuries are being displayed and how we intervene with those injuries as well. And then making those decisions and nutrition strategies around all the information that is dictated that gives us from each data point that is available. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, it froze. So now the things that you have to consider now with the challenges as well is limited resources. So you may have budget constraints. You may have difficulty in investing in expensive performance nutrition programs, or even having the proper staff in order to even emphasize and also utilize this information. There's also potentially a lack of education and awareness. So understanding the importance of nutrition and performance. There may be misconceptions, especially with all this clutter of information that the wonderful thing as far as the websites gives us, Web3, Web2, all that stuff that we're getting information from, and seeing as far as all that is coming out from diets and healthy eating, and who gives that information. So there's limited access to also healthy food options, depending on where you're staying from, depending on where your student athletes are coming from. They may be coming from rural areas or inner cities as well. Some that may have food deserts, some that may not have quality as far as grocery stores around in those regions. And also you may have actually time constraints too, because of doing so many jobs in that one situation from our role and everything being within our role. to having that demand and practice and competition schedules, and not giving your all as far as around, okay, even thinking outside or having the ability to think of what's next and what we're not doing. And then you may also actually just simply have picky eaters, and then dietary restrictions from even things that you want to implement and that you want to have innovated are a part of even the health and performance staff and teams of how you're changing and structuring those policies and protocols and everything of that nature. So you have to ask yourself when you're looking into these situations, what does the research and data show? What are we not doing currently? What are we not measuring? What can we improve? How can we improve it? And how can we measure those improvements? These are all questions that are suitable when thinking outside the box and thinking as far as, okay, what can we do to implement certain strategies from evidence? And then that's upcoming, but then also now thinking what is worth our time for the culture of our team that we're serving every single day. And that leads into a phenomenal paper that I saw was from Paper to Podium, and looking at that matrix. So from everything that we're seeing, from all this information, from this data, in which quadrant are we seeing this research and evidence falling in? So it can just be as far as even the status quo, where there's just practical application of existing science. You can see that there's next to increased potential of the evidence that's being shown, where those performance outcomes are led by developing research, and the innovation and also translation. Potential is there, but you have to work in between your environment. There's also existing science and practical application of existing science. So that leads to those performance outcomes. So starting to kind of show the evidence in that it can be translated and transferable amongst no matter the scenario or situation that you're in. And then just actually making research informed practice from that last one, the transformational improvements of that innovation. So you are able to make improved changes and practical application for performance outcomes. So the importance of that analytics and monitoring and improving performance, this gives you the why behind assessing rather than guessing. This relates to physical performance, to nutrition recovery, and also identifies those patterns and trends that can inform decisions on strategies around supporting or enhancing performance. So this can be used actually to evaluate the effectiveness of everything that we do. This can provide that value of when people ask, what is your job and what do you do? Well, here's the data to show what impact we have made, whether it is with administration, whether it is with the strength and conditioning coaches, with the coaching staff, with sports medicine, and giving them a true understanding of what we do and how we affect everything that they do as well. So you need to have this and provide that value and show importance in monitoring, improving athlete performance by looking at data and also how that story shows and is portrayed on the value of your job and your role. So one things that we do here for our data points to even consider and looking at everything, and there's a ton of information that you can look at to monitor and improve athlete performance. So you want to track, so certain things like anthropometric data. So even from how you can use DEXA scans, in-body analysis, bod pod, skin fold measurements. So looking at target weights, weekly average weights, daily weights, bone mineral content and density, and also height and weight and percent body fat. So your simple fat mass, lean muscle mass that's available, the ratio between that, and also the fat-free mass index. You can look at subjective wellness, especially how you're using, rather if you're using things like athlete management systems like SmarterBase and things like that to measure from a qualitative scale, your sleep habits, eating habits, stress levels, fatigue, soreness, energy levels. Everything as well, from even what Catapult shows, if you're looking at our Oura rings from HRV to resting heart rate, respiratory rate, VO2 max metabolic hearts, activity level, the types of injuries that are being shown from sports medicine, the types of nutrition interventions, the sleep quality and quantity that you're tracking and measuring, and also from what we can also show from our data management and how we effectively do our jobs is the lab values in the sense of everything from ferritin, vitamin D, sickle cell, vitamin B12, folate, phosphorus, omega-3 index scores, things of that we can control from dietary changes and manipulation and supplement interventions as well. So those current innovations that you're starting to see that that can be seen within the research that's starting to show that can be transformational or translational. And they're still novel in a sense, though, especially with nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. And that's looking at how genetics can influence the athlete's response to different types of foods and supplements. And then also looking at advanced hydration strategies from upcoming sweat patches that we're starting to see, from looking at as far as looking at inflow measurements or looking at light refractometry, sorry, and then also looking at urine specific gravity as well. So looking at all these things of how they train, compete in the fluids loss, and also preventing as far as whatever you're seeing from cramps, from making sure that athlete is in a hydrated state prior to participation. And then also looking at things like mental performance enhancers as well that you're starting to see with supplements, those nootropics, if you will, that gives cognitive benefits and improving mental focus, depending on various sports, I end up having those. And also just looking at the collection of small molecules and metabolites as well, presented in organisms, and also time restricted eating, having the timing of particular nutrients that has a value towards performance and recovery within that window that quote unquote you're supposed to eat to have the best benefit and output. So we're looking at kind of those metrics. So data points simply when it comes on the business side of it is just looking at the metrics of what you do day to day. How many as far as consults you've been having, what is the athlete ratio to practitioner ratio, what services are you able to provide because of the lack of ability to make needs or meet the needs of 200, 300 athletes, 400 athletes that only one person is responsible for, and what services that is, instead of just being seen as the people behind the fueling station bar. So you want to look at those metrics and paint the picture for administration, and paint the picture for how the data that you see day to day from that affects everyone across that room for the best benefit and the performance outcomes of your teams, how your job affects that, and what services do you provide to affect those changes. So you want to look at those data analytics, and you want to look at assessment and collaboration. So how you work with sports science, how you work with athletic development or strength and conditioning, and how you work with sports medicine. So what we do here, we provide player reports on around how our DEXAs see and how our DEXAs give information, how much they are in comparison to the previous athletes in the past that were here, and also, even if you will, an NFL standard as well per position that you commonly see on average within that position, from fat mass, lean mass, bone mineral density, and also body fat percentage and weight. And then working with as far as even when it comes to those weekly scans or those daily weights, and then looking at the information and showing, okay, whether or not they're within their range, not within their range, opposed to looking at every single day on day-to-day changes and not accounting for those fluctuations depending on what they consume. So, and how to measure that and how you're seeing data that is being measured is some sweat patches in your analysis, GPS and catapult, body weight scales, and also body imaging. Sleep wearables is huge, and also athlete management systems, and also EMRs, your electronic medical records, can even within the constraints of actually privacy laws and what you're doing and how you're having that internal information as far as discuss, and then how you want to provide information to your team to show those outcomes being changed. There's also as far as even technology around how athletes are on the phone, such as note mills, such as meal management systems, and meal planning systems, such as far as organizing and structuring those meal plans around position or gender or whatever it may be that the practitioner best sees fit. So that way that those visuals for the athletes is being shown. And then alongside with that, it's just even for us, what we see here is practical hydration strategies. So with working with sports science and athletic development and sports medicine, it's showing, okay, how much do they need to rehydrate, even in those camp times, those camp months, whether or not they're within their normal range of their fluctuated as far as hydration statuses, and also weight ranges and weight changes. Alongside with that, showing whether or not that they have weighed in, they have not, that you got that data, that you have that information, and how you educate each player right then and there on whether or not they're within that range, not within that range, or if they need to do certain practices or certain strategies before the next bout of activity to ensure that they're having the top as far as recovery taking place, and then also they're ready for the next bout of activity for their performance in the next session. So you want to make sure that you're also providing those reports. How are you structuring the information around your coaching staff, your strength conditioning coaches, your sports medicine, around what information that you house, that you control, and how are you providing information in a way that they can easily read, retain, and as far as see everything you've done. For us, we collect our interventions we do at the end of the day, every single day, from our supplementation, also from our education, from our even the one-on-one consults and information we provided then, referring back to their lab values, referring back to also their outcomes when it came into certain, if they has visited the athletic training staff for certain situations and certain injuries or for rehab sessions. And then also how we provide information in a way to, okay, this is where the ranges are for your current player. This is where they sit in comparison to where you want them to be at. This is how we're going to strategically help and support those student athletes and for your players to end up getting to the goal that we all collectively agree on. Because this is where also this helps you with information on, okay, this is where they are, this is where you want them to be. Okay, well, can they realistically get to that point that you want them to be at as well? Well, and how can they do that? What do we need to change? What other lab assessments and assessments we need to take in consideration to show improvement of body composition, of performance, and of recovery? So that's what we do here. And we love to, as far as show the information around, okay, this is the structure of, okay, certain players, the identify, seeing as far as, okay, the improvements over the certain bout of the training regimen and session and season that the player is in, whether that's off season, in season, post season, and also preseason camps or whatever it may be for the players that you work with every single day. In each session, how are those sessions and how is that player changing over the course of time, and what is changing? If the weight is changing, okay, what of the weight is changing? The lean mass, the fat-free mass, and also the percent body fat, to go towards those goals that they want to see. And the players love seeing this information to see, okay, they need to understand how to take care of themselves, because if they do not, in certain professional organizations, they get penalized for not taking care of themselves, and they just don't understand, they just don't know. So they got to know the data, and they have to understand what the data means, and you have to thoroughly teach them individually and structure your education around how they best learn and receive the information. So again, and it's all based on as far as each position, each player, each thing that you do. You want to make sure that you find your team and you look at the factors of where and what you want your team as far as to do to make sure that you're showing. So the data is showing that you have value within this team. Not only do you have value, but you play a very important role in how this player changes and how this player develops and how this player ends up making to the next level, or how they can be a professional and how they can be successful here and so forth in their health and their careers in the ladder. So again, showing data, you have to show the data. So we've shown as far as the average of our scans from the increase from even from April to July or whatever it may be, whatever is best for you. But you want to kind of segment the timeline of how you made the impact for your players to do well, and then what they did well with, and then what changes that was taking place. And even if it's showing as far as just an overall of like how certain labs change. I talked to our guys even today as far as just discussing with them the value of vitamin D, but also when we did those lab assessments, how many people of the team collectively in the percentage wise were vitamin D deficient, and then what are the risk of those complications as well. So let them see that, and then providing that value to also to your coaching staff and telling them, okay, this is the information that we discussed for these players. This is the information that also we need to discuss with research and look forward into. How can we better collect this information? How can we better work with your team of innovation and your team of health performance? How can you work with, because we have a great job here of doing as far as having those meetings and discussing around that with strength conditioning, sports medicine, performance innovation, nutrition, and then also the liaison for the chief of staff, and just discussing those scenarios of what are we doing now? How can we better collect this information? What other research can we do internally? How can we steer our committee around looking at, okay, this is in the best interest of us, This is how we're going to use this information. And then also, what are we going to share? What are we not going to share? And having those things strategized around that. So you want to meet routinely to think always outside of what you're doing. Yeah, what works is what works, but then also you want to think ahead at all times. The only way you're going to do that is if you're looking and you're assessing, okay, what did I do then? What can I do better now? So one thing, as far as like just even in a simple example of just even preseason camp, those changes where if there was people that were unavailable long term, if there was limited as far as supplement protocols, if there was no occurring lab testing done, if there was basic nutrition revolving around return to play, and then if there was just sporadic body composition testing that was done and looking at where are you falling short in, what can you change around the certain things you can do that you can change the testing, change the assessment, change as far as how you can serve as a practitioner to improve those things for the future. And then looking at now, we see that instead of 15, only one player being out or unavailable due to an injury or long-term injury that was non-contact related, or having structured and rigorous education curriculums that's available, and then what's being provided in that curriculum. Having as far as those supplement protocols, as far as looking at the compliance, if they're taking it or if they're not taking it, how many of them are missing those supplements? How are you tracking that information? How are you looking at when are you doing the lab testing, and how are you looking at those labs? What are you looking for? Well, how are you going to intervene with those tests as well? Looking at even the compliance, if you will, and then how much when it comes to the compliance of, are they making their meals? How are you showing value and support in those meals and their decisions in those meals? How are they making consistent choices? How are they looking at the timing of that? So there's a lot of things that you got to ask yourself, and then you got to provide a value of, okay, when I'm asking these questions, how can I show that I'm improving these situations based on the job that I do every single day? So just even in a sense, I say next steps when it comes into how you're looking at your team, and what you need to do is just collaborating with your staff, with your sports science departments, if you have those at your ability, or just connecting with people so you can get and formulate ideas, not just talking to nobody, but just who's in your silo or who's in your field. Looking as far as working with those sports medicine staff, strength conditioning departments, mental performance, and also coaching staffs on what are you looking at? How are you measuring information? What are the data points to show that you are having success in your job? Once you get that information, then you start relating, okay, this shows, okay, how my job show that it's relatable to what you do. And then how I can make an impact on your job as well, and what we do to best serve and educate these players. So the next thing is to learn to either code or hire a sports scientist and stop trying to just figure out by yourself. So then that way you can also analyze the data the right way and understand what you're looking at. And we're very spoiled here because we did that part, and our director of athletic development did a great job on who he brought in here to make sure with Scott Kuhn and Jordan Pinella for the managers of applied sports science to show that information, to always challenge what we are doing and how we can improve that information as well. So Jake Flynn did a phenomenal job with doing that. And having also the support of our head coach, because the head coach sets the tone with who you're working with, and they got to value the information that you're providing too, and support what you're doing by also mimicking the information that you're trying to tell them as well. So this is all about showing them why this is important for their jobs and why it should be important for them to value. You just have to be creative around how's their best way to learn for them to understand, like, this is very important. So then that way they can mimic the structure around what you're trying to do, so the team as a collective can value what you're doing as well. And you got to just revisit those questions consistently. What does the research and data show? What are we not doing? What are we not measuring? What can we improve? How can we improve it? And how can we measure those improvements? Always ask yourself those questions and always reassess what you're doing. Never getting to the point to where that you are just satisfied with what that is, because then you will not allow yourself to be a part of the innovation that needs to take place for these future ideas. That's increasing use of technology. So wearable technology that you're seeing, and the role in monitoring and tracking athlete performance and physical performance and nutrition, looking at personalized nutrition, not giving as far as a sugar coat of that information that you're giving, and then giving it to the next player, and then giving it to the next player, and then giving it to the next player. What is those assessments showing? How are you developing information and those plans around and taking into account their unique and their individual needs and their genetic makeup? How are you increasing emphasis on recovery? How are you looking at a better understanding of the role nutrition plays in recovery? And the teams will continue to focus on developing strategies to optimize that recovery and prevent the injury as well. How are we using data analytics? You got to look at, as far as this is how innovation is going to take place, is looking more into the data. How will the team actually continue to use that data and also evaluate the effectiveness of the performance and how that nutrition program supports that situation? There's also a lot of plant-based options as well that actually you may think that are not a part of innovative as far as will, but with us being as far as in sustainable practices that are coming more and more and about, you have to start thinking ahead and then looking at as far as, okay, what are things that are plant-based options, not in the sense of whether it's vegetarian or vegan or anything like that, but there are commonly seen as athletes that are coming in and coming with you to those questions as far as those diet practices when it comes into restricting meat or anything like that, but just having understanding. And because it's becoming more and more popular, because it is, then you have to properly not only educate them, but looking at as far as, okay, what can actually be of value, what does not make sense to not be of value. And then also looking at things like those mental performance enhancers, looking at microbiome research. What is the actual gut telling us? How we are looking at those stools, how are we looking as far as looking at how their digestive health is and how the gut bacteria plays on performance. That is coming up. And then also the time restricted eating. Timing is going to be king. Timing is everything. And teams are exploring more and more how to optimize body composition and also nutrient displays, and also how nutrient profiles in your labs are affected by the timing of certain things. And now how do we test and see how it's actually showing that too? And then actually looking at now virtual reality and augmented reality too, and looking at technologies that continue to kind of push the curve around that, to create those virtual environments that stimulate different types of training conditions. Because with that now, if you have an athlete that is now going into VR and AR and they're not physically getting those reps, but now they're mentally getting the reps, at what point? And then how does it show as far as caloric expenditure? What can you do also to support that athlete and to making sure they're getting the best of their ability within those sessions as well? And how can you do so? Because even the mental game is just as important as the physical as well, as far as depending on the sport you play, no matter what it is, it's always going to work in conjunction with each other. So that right there is my last slide right there. So now I am open to taking any questions you may have or clarify anything that I did not do a good job at clarifying.
Thanks, Matt. Awesome. Incredible information. We have a lot of questions that have started to come in. And first I was like, there's only 2 questions. And then boom, they all started coming in, which I think is, this is, as you mentioned, there's so many different things you can test. We were talking about this last night in Jen's talk about sugar and carbohydrate. And, just there's so many different options, but we try to be perfect with nutrition. We try to be perfect. And we can't, it's just, even though you do one thing for one athlete, it may not apply for the other athlete, right? And that's just something that you mentioned. I liked hearing that. So let's go through the questions. The first question is, it said level of care spreadsheet. I noticed a fee with initial consult, et cetera. Does LSU nutrition department charge a service or team?
No, so that's where you look at in an average, whether it's a national average or a local average, whatever it may be, just to fit the information. That's not us charging a fee. That's more so of, if you was to look at a private practice dietitian, or if you was to look at someone else in outpatient care, what are they typically charging in those things, and showing that, okay, this is just talking in a sense of the information of how the business office looks at it and how they look at our jobs from dollars and cents. So looking at, okay, well, this is an amount of service that we provide. This is how much it would typically cost. And then also taking consideration of who we need to actually bring on board and staff, because we're missing points of where we need to actually put people at to provide these services. This is how much this typically is going to cost. Rather, you can show it as you're getting it at a discount by hiring somebody full time, or you can show it as that you are actually providing a value of services of what it typically would be seen and charged in a medical situation. So it's just also about how you can use that data and information on those fees or whatever it may be. But looking at us, we just seen it as, okay, what is the actual local average and national average around our services that are being provided from private practice and outpatient care? And then this is what they're seeing, and this is the services that we're giving. This is why we're important here. This is why we should have a word and a voice here. This is why we need to have a value and why we need to make the changes here and have that voice in the making those changes instead of you making those decisions because of what we do.
Right. Okay. Awesome. I know you showed a picture of the DEXA scan, but the question is, can you share what methodology you use for body fat assessment?
Yeah, so we use the whole logic. We use DEXA here for us. I know of other places I use my ISAC certification to use skin fold measurements as well to kind of get some type of, as far as, idea of where they are. And that's at the mercy of the user error. So it's same thing as far as with DEXA as well, but not as much error within variability. But we use the DEXA to look at the body composition overall, and then where they going and where they are currently.
Yeah, I remember years ago in collegiate, we did skin fold for football, but then we sent the starters to get DEXA, and it was just interesting to see the pretty significant variance, especially when you try to pinch the abdominal growth of an offensive lineman, and then go, oh yeah, that's why I can't get all that intra fat. This next question, you may or may not know all of these qualifications, but because it's kind of like the same person, I think, asking two questions. What type of qualifications would you look for in a sports scientist? What type of qualifications would you look for in a data analyst?
Honestly, so that's actually a great question. And honestly, so our individuals here, like Scott Kuhn and also Gabe Merville, can answer those best. But because they are data analysts and they are our manager of applied sports science. And you got to remember too, it is a very, very new concept and field, and standardizing that. So I know as far as NSCA has the sports science comparable to CPSS, I believe, the Certified Professional Sports Science or something like that. That is, one pathway to go. But to be honest, is more so about, okay, what is the work that they have accomplished? What have they done? Can they show you as far as the information they've been able to collect? So those, as far as we're still in the novelty phases of it, as far as those certifications and professional stamps around those individuals that are professionals in it. So I think more so around those individuals that are in computer science or computer engineering or things like that will be so those individuals that gives those preliminary qualifications around it. And then being able to show their work around, okay, this is what I've been doing to show that I can code, to show that I can collect data, to show that I can organize the data and show it to you.
So when you look at, and a little bit off topic, so when you look at, former head athletic trainer Jack Marucci and some of the stuff, is he still working with performance innovation? Because I've seen some of the articles and knowing Jack and some of the stuff of looking at, percentage of people that catch this and looking at different things. I mean, how does he integrate in some of the stuff that you do?
Yep. So that he is still in performance innovation. He's our director for performance innovation. Jack Marucci does everything when it comes into, again, looking at other technological components that we are assessing as well. So from the S2, from the logic, looking at hand-eye track coordination, that is way over my head as far as with that. So it's more so around, okay, Jack, what sessions are they coming to you for? What sessions they just get done with when it comes to strength conditioning?
Yeah.
And then how much as far as are you going to use capacity-wise as far as them working out in your session to test all that? Like what's going on? So he's still giving us the information. The man is brilliant and intelligent out of this world. So it's just more so now about like where are they testing in their assessments as far as prior to concussions, and then looking at now, okay, if they reassess with those concussions now, how are you looking at from your intervention to get them back to that baseline from that test that they are using, even from the S2 or things like that. So
I remember reading the article in the paper about the hand-eye coordination. I'm like, how in the world is he figuring out wind and this and that? And this is where you need to throw on this play. I was like, that's just fantastic. It's
the velocity, the spin of the ball, the height. building devices around the spot, and also how the punt is supposed to go as well during those practice sessions to give your punters a break. Just like stuff like that, little stuff like that he's implemented and that he's done. And he's actually done a great job of giving me the information when it comes into looking at, okay, this is what you're seeing in the combine as far as in the DEXAs, this is information that you're seeing there. And then now how can you actually strategize your plan to make sure that they are within the ranges of what they're going to be competing against when they get to the combine.
This next question is really good. I love this question. Is what is your opinion on tracking and measuring energy and nutrient intake, cost benefit of it, viability, and obviously, accuracy, right?
Right, man. So for me, it's kind of hard for me to give a detailed explanation for that, because it depends on the level of where your culture is of your team, and if they're ready to even be able to track, and if they even care about that information. So that's the thing you always have to consider, is the data that you're collecting, is it best for you or is it best for them? And you
Right.
want to make the decision as far as that the data that you're collecting, the valid information, and if it's actually going to be a benefit. Do you want to invest in looking at that? Are they going to be compliant, and so that we can get accurate information as well? How long is that testing going to be with that? Because if the test takes forever, and you got to put them in a metabolic chamber to look at as far as how much they're having, I'm pretty sure these young kids are not going to end up doing that. There you have adults that's not going to sit there for 24 hours or anything like that, plus to monitor how much their resting metabolic rate or things like that is. So it just all depends.
Sorry, good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think there's too much obsession about getting macros correct and, how many macros do they eat this way? This is a population that, number one, you don't want them tracking anything really, meaning they would have to weigh, measure. They barely have time to eat in most cases. So if you add anything like that, it's going to create an eating disorder. And we've seen science around that. So, I'm sure obviously you're tracking weight, you're tracking body comp. That's how you know if what they're doing is working.
Yep.
What metrics do you find your coaching staff values the most? What area of data are they most frequently asking about?
Playing time, availability. They're also looking at as far as where they're weighing at. They're looking at also the stuff that Jack is putting out, their timing of their catches, their velocity. They're looking at as far as how fast they are running, so they can see what reps and schemes they can actually put them in, at what angles that they are actually running in, how long it takes for them to get to those angles. So they're looking more so at that information. For us, and our information is more so of they want to know as far as where their body composition is, how far along are they to get to that goal, and then also alongside with that, for us, since we're in this heat, they actually truly care about the hydration practices too, and then how and electrolyte imbalances as well. That's one thing. You know what? Hats off to them, because they got a good understanding of it, because they want to know how long until my player starts cramping. What do you need to do to fix them, so that way they can stay available in this game?
It's a little bit of a different humidity from South Bend, Indiana to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right?
1,000%. Much different. Oh my goodness.
How do you recommend? This is another great question. How do you recommend to approach support staff, such as strength and conditioning, to track performance on their end to connect with the type of data that you're trying to collect as well?
So they care about presence. I've learned that the long way. They care about the presence, and they care that you're around when they are doing their assessments. So that way you can look at kind of what they're doing, and you can see as far as, okay, if you're there while they're doing the assessment, you can ask those small questions here and there, but they truly care and they want to have the conversation around you. If it looks like you've been there around to see them even assess the information, that you care to have an understanding of what they're doing. So the metrics that, for us, when it comes into looking at how strength conditioning, as far as what they're doing as well, even when it comes to player load, the player load for me is also, when I'm looking and I'm talking to them for that, has been phenomenal, because I'm looking at the amount of expenditure that this athlete theoretically is actually spending, then also the amount of time from recovery from from yesterday to today, if it's increasing, or if we're actually looking at how practices are going and how the training sessions are going. If I need to actually provide more services around nutrition for decreasing inflammation, for also interventions around replenishing as far as glycogen or whatever it may be to go to the next step. They love having those conversations around that. Like, I noticed you're doing this. I noticed you're collecting player load. Well, the session today, was very intense. So I'm gonna have to go talk to this player to educate them around how much they need to eat, because they may not have too much of an appetite. They love hearing things like that. If you associate around what they're doing, boom, you're in there.
Another great question. How many people on your staff does it take to collect this amount of data with testing, measuring, data entry, and what data? That'll be the first question, because it's the same person asking the next question. So,
Yep.
How many people?
How many people? So for me, I have it structured to where it's myself, the assistant, and also the fellow. So just even us, I have kind of from the information for sports medicine on the type of injury and the type of intervention. I have my fellow putting that in. So that's one person doing that, from the compliance, and then also structuring as far as what's done on the education, and looking at what was spoken about. So that is collected from my assistant, because then they can keep track of that, and also the budget as well. So, and as far as for me, it's looking at the bigger picture from everything, collecting all the information, where interventions took place, what lab assessments were done, what they weighed as far as in their smarter base and catapult, player loads, and then looking at as far as their the timing of practice and the timing of certain injuries that took place, and what we need to do. So that way I can tell the coaching staff, this collectively is what was done. So for me, it's taken 3. If you can find somebody that just solely focuses on that, and that's their full-time job, that's perfect. Because even in athletic development, strength conditioning, we have a manager of applied sports science, then we have an assistant manager of applied sports science. So you have 2 people collecting data and running as far as information and how the information should be displayed around that. And then collecting all the information from everyone else to say, okay, what should we do? Let's meet this month to discuss that.
Yeah, if I could go back and get a new major, it would be sports science, and really just looking at data all day. I think for me, that's just fascinating. What data do you collect on the road? So if you're traveling for competition, with LSU football, is there anything that you're collecting while traveling?
Yep. So for us, it's more so about, for me, the timing of when they had certain things. I'm collecting also the timing of their hydration strategy. So when I'm telling them to have certain electrolytes, depending on the atmosphere that we're in, and then also, so we're not collecting we are not collecting their weight at that time, because it's way too much. That you're doing way too much at that time, because they're getting focused for that game. They're ready, and that's just my personal opinion. A time you don't want to be too far in their space as much as possible as they're mentally preparing for that game. So then we also collect as far as just whether or not they complied and they took their supplementation I need them to take. And that's it. When it comes to those game day situations, that's it.
If you couldn't do all the testing that you have, what would be the top 3 tests that you would consider essential?
So one, I would love to test as far as where they are on the average in the week, how their weight is. Are they holding their weight? Are they actually being strategic around their practices? Are they consistent with their choices of timing? So I want to look at throughout the course of the week, on average, what their weight has been. Are they showing progress to the next step? The next one is going to be around hydration. So now I want to see, as far as if I could, and I wish, and I'm hoping that it gets to that point to where we have like a sweat patch, if you will, that is valid and reputable, and that shows a sensor or shows information in real time to show how much electrolytes is being lost in real time. So that way you can know when to intervene. And then also for me, I would say that's absolutely essential. And I'm looking at as far as like thinking about like budgets and all that, because you can do the refractometer when it comes with that, but that measures kidney function rather than actual hydration. And then the next thing would be, honestly, I will look at overall body composition. So it's just how you can do that in that form. If you can assess that, that's where I think the most biggest pieces and chunks that you can do. Those are the top 3 that I would want to look at, because that's what I can show face value of what I'm having an impact on to the coaching staff and the people that pays my check. So
it sounds like NFL, LSU's performance innovation team needs to develop a sweat patch to analyze sweat in real time. Sounds like you'll have another PhD project on the
We got a lot of research projects that we're trying to undergo right now, and that's the beauty of it. So yeah.
How do you determine optimal body composition ranges, and how do you encourage that while being sensitive to an athlete's mental health or body image?
Yep. So it depends on the sport that you're in and that you're working with. So for us, it's more so around them looking at and it's all about how you give and educate the information too. So some people can educate the information in an improper way that is not taking consideration sensitivity to how they view the information. And what I mean by that is like, okay, here we go. I am looking at how you are in comparison, getting ready for the dream that you're trying to live in, that you want to play in the NFL. So in comparison to what you are, and then also what we have had here in the past 10 years. So not only what we have had here in the past 10 years, but then also what you want to be. And this is what the combine is seeing as far as for your body composition, for your position. This is what's going to measure up. Here are the penalties for every time that you're outside of a given range or a given target goal weight that they have for you. So we have to let's start discussing this now so that way you know how to take care of yourself and how you need to actually get towards your target range and target weight. So that way you're not losing thousands of dollars and getting in penalties.
Gotcha.
Associated towards that, they receive it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, good. No, go ahead, Matt. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was saying just associated towards that, it's been the best for us because they associate around it's not just their health and also to show how much mass they have and how much lean muscle tissue they have, but then also for overall health to show that they can be available. And then how am I affected if I'm not taking care of myself in my job?
Excellent. Okay. Do you work with track and field? Because the next question is related to one of the coaches that I think used to be with LSU, Boo Schexnayder, with LSU with track and field. I used to work with Boo years ago, but I don't know. It just says he's involved with track and field and nutrition. Do you do anything, I guess, as regards to testing anything with track athletes?
I do not personally. So my staff, and I'm building my staff to work with track and field. So we have a dietitian that's on staff that just came on board that actually is working with track and field now. So with that being said, there's starting to be a little bit more as far as trusting around that. And then also the information is given. Again, because of the value we've been showing and the data we've been showing of the impact we've been having, now everyone wants to see, you know what, we need to have somebody involved that can do this a lot better. Their players is healthier. They're performing better than what they've done. We need something like that to help us. So now you can start getting people on board. I need money to hire people. Here, give me something so I can hire them. So yes.
So
I don't
buy. I don't know if you can see this question. It's more of a long statement with some questions. And so do you assess, and if you need to pull it up with you, you can just type at the bottom or look at the Q&A. Do you assess athletes and players on nutrition education level or even readiness to change before collecting data on them? In other words, there are some players or athletes who would benefit from their data being monitored versus other athletes and players who simply need to do the simple things like eating breakfast, fresh produce, etc. Do you take that into account?
Yeah, so we actually have a nutrition questionnaire that we use. So I used that last year. I'm actually going to use it when the rest of the team comes in the summertime. I didn't do it right now because we have mid-years and transfers in at this, and it's a small group, and we have the rest of our team come in, and I plan on doing that then. But that's where I like to kind of see as far as, okay, what they're currently doing, and then also what information do they know now. So with that being said, I don't test as far as readiness to change, but I do test as far as what information they do know. So readiness to change is a good point, and also to start testing, and actually a great idea. It's just about they get tested so much on so many questionnaires and surveys. It's like, okay, at what point are they given, are they not having testing fatigue? Or are they wanting to give you the valid answer around it? So that's just things I think about.
So we have a question from a high school coach. What do you suggest as the most important things to measure with high school athletes? All this stuff is awesome, but as a high school coach, we have to balance too much to do it all. Oh, and he says you basically answered this already. Never mind. He answered his own.
Fundamentals.
Okay. What's your opinion on sleep tracking equipments? Can this be a good addition in a sports nutrition program?
100% be a good addition. The only thing I consider is you're not with them at the time they're going to sleep. Are they actually doing what you tell them to do at the right time? So are they going to be consistent with wearing those devices? It's always been an issue. It's the compliance around that. If you can get someone to be very, that can comply around that 1,000%, it will be very helpful, because then you can actually implement strategies and interventions around what you can do, supplement or nutrition wise, food wise, that will help improve their sleep quality.
Excellent. Kindly explain about time restricted eating. How can it be tracked?
So that's if you are with them day to day. The only way I can see time restricting being tracked is if you're with them every hour, on the hour, or they are very great at telling you what they ate, when they ate it. So you can assess now around their schedule of academics, their schedule of practice, their schedule of training, and then around what factors of nutrition you want to give at those times. As far as the actual impact of which part of which nutrient made an impact, that is very difficult to pinpoint, and there's no way to pinpoint that yet.
Never. Yeah.
We have theories, but you can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's too many nutrients, right? If you had three micronutrients, sure. But yeah, I mean, it's, again, I think with so much variability in athlete output and, volume, and these things change on a day, weekends when they're off, maybe, it's like you got to adjust that. I go back to athletes should never be weighing food. I know, I'm sure they're not, but if you get to that point, that's going to create a massive problem. All right, a couple more questions. There was a question, and actually I saw it get erased. So you use Notemeal. I think that's a fantastic app when it comes to obviously helping athletes order their meals and track certain things. How do you implement that with what you do at the collegiate setting?
So I have for my guys, as I'm trying to improve their engagement around that app as well. So I want them to at least give me a certain amount of meals each week that they've decided to take, rather than just taking a picture and logging it into that app. And I can, on the back end, when it comes to those conversations or time to talk with them, log in what they kind of ate to show them as far as like how much, in theory, that this meal is providing them in certain nutrients. So with that being said, that's about what we do there, is just tracking the engagement, improving engagement there, and just having them log X amount of meals throughout the week.
But if they don't, let's say like weekends, if they go to restaurants or they dine out and they don't use it, does it throw you off a little bit? I mean, I'm assuming they have to use it on a regular basis to get a consistent, evaluation.
Right. If you had someone that was to track every little thing and log every little thing, the more accurate it'll be.
Sure.
Realistically, that's not going to happen for this stage.
All right. Last two questions. Awesome presentation, Matt. And this is from another sports RD, Jeff. I'm curious if you guys ever have looked at heart rate variability, either in context of nutrition or just overall recovery.
So we're looking at that point. I'm hoping that we get to the point to where we can readdress and reissue the Oura rings, if you will. We actually talked about this earlier, was like, are we ever going to get the heart rate monitors around the catapult vest as well, so that way they can track that heart rate too. It looks like one of the players hate wearing them around it. They move around all over the place while they're doing their drills, and they can't stand it. And the compliance around that is going to be no. So I would love to track it. The more data I have, the better. But then again, it goes back to my next point. Are you doing it for the best interest of that player to know the information for them to compete? Or are you doing it for yourself to kind of better give your strategies, but can you do it in another way that they can also learn information without being a hindrance to what they want to do?
I love this coach. He's so humble. You can't get to this question, it's fine. He's asked a lot already. He said, do you consider weight gain versus sports specific metrics like speed, vertical? If so, how do you balance football coaches wanting extra weight put on, keeping performance metrics improving? It's a great question.
We have, that's why we have those conversations. That's why they got to know what we're talking about and at the rate that they are improving mass. So I look at 5 points in a year when it comes into their body composition. And then also one thing that I want to get into is actually look at the fat-free mass index to see how much lean mass and threshold that individual player can put on for their position. What is the typical range that you're seeing in that position? So you can dictate if they're under that line, yeah, we can probably put on some more mass. and then track constantly over and over and over again their speed outputs, their velocity, their power outputs, and also the player load to monitor to see if the progression or the increase in that weight, if it's causing an effect of them to their performance to decrease or decline. Because if it is, if they're increasing too much mass too soon or not in a pace to where they can handle and their performance is going down, then now you're just contradicting yourself on what you want them to do. You're sacrificing performance to just increase a number on the scale. So
Excellent.
That's why we have those conversations that kind of meet each other as far as in the middle. They have their idea and it's like, man, coach, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are having everything they need to do. Their weight's progression. This may be the point that they can handle right now until we get to the next stage of development.
Excellent. Matt, thank you so much. And Coach Tyson, who just asked that, please check out the Eat to Win app. It's specifically designed for high school athletes and will help them solve a lot of those problems with understanding how many calories they need, but really how to meal plan. Pretty much provides you with a customized plan and there's no guessing. Matt, fantastic presentation. We're not finished today, guys. We have 2 presentations today. So in 30 minutes, we're going to go live again. We'll be presenting on caffeine and athletic performance. So don't leave, or you can leave and come back in 30 minutes. Ryan Nucio from the Gatorade Sports Science Institute will be closing us out. This will be the first time we have back-to-back performances. Matt, an incredible presentation, my friend. It's awesome to have you. Thank you for joining us for Sports Nutrition Symposium 6.0. You're only an hour away from me, so I know I'm going to be seeing you more often, than needed.
Yeah, I'll see you soon, my brother. Thank you so much, man. Y'all have a blessed day. Appreciate it.
And then we'll see you guys shortly in the next 30 minutes for those of you that will be attending our final presentation for this symposium. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon. See you soon.